So we're going to do an interesting session today where we're going to be talking about blue sapphires, and I have a very special guest with me today, Armal Samoon, who is from Sri Lanka. Hi Armal, how are you?
Hi, Tina.
So Armil is the fifth generation gem merchant in his family, and he is also the chairman of the Sapphire Capital Group, and is the current president of the GI alumni in Sri Lanka. And Armil has been doing a lot in the gems and jewelry industry in Sri Lanka. So it was great, in fact, meeting you when I came to Sri Lanka for Passage 2019, and I look forward to coming this year again.
Please, we look forward to having as many of you all back here in Sri Lanka.
I can't wait to be there again. I really love the country.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for the kind
Uh,
words.
my pleasure. So, Armal, usually we have a common question from people that, what is a blue sapphire? How is it formed? And where is it found? Um, or what are the various kinds of sapphires? So, can we begin with that and then get into the flow of conversation?
Sure, sure. So, so sapphire comes from a type of mineral from the corundum family,
Yeah.
and it's generally comes in a whitish color
Okay.
material, which and its different impurities gives it different colors. Now,
Okay.
while blue sapphire, just like your dress, Prina, uh,
Yeah.
gives
I
it
wore that
the
for the
most
effects.
perfect, and
Something
it
like this.
is one of the yes, wonderful.
Yeah.
Is one of the most sought after or famous and popular colors. We do
Okay.
get sapphires in all the different shades of color, and I
Okay.
think today people do appreciate all the different, in not only the colors in itself or just the deep color, but now we see people who appreciate all the different shades or saturations of color, which
So
was
when you
never
say the
before.
white part, is it something like this that you mean?
Yes, yes, that's
Okay.
right. That's correct. So the material in general, the corundum would be a whitish material, and then uh, the impurities that are in the stone gives it different colors from a blue sapphire then to yellow, green, a pastel shade of yellow. Then
Okay.
we also have the red sapphire. Most
Okay.
people know the red sapphire as a ruby.
Okay.
So people do think sapphire and ruby are two different stones.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's ruby is a trade name used for the red sapphire, and
Oh,
so it
interesting.
also yes, and it also falls into the same sapphire on corundum family.
That is very interesting. I think
And
a lot of people wouldn't have probably known that fact.
yes, yes, and we also obviously have one of the another colors which is a mixture of pink and orange, or the almost the color of a sunset, and
Okay.
that's a beautiful uh, sapphire now, and it's very popular, and it's
But
called the
Parashta.
king sapphire, or no, yes, people know it as Patparaj.
Oh, that is very interesting. I mean, these, we just know the trade names, but we do not know the science behind or why these gemstones are called those.
Correct. Yes,
Like
that's right.
very interestingly, when I came to Sri Lanka, I know that they call it Neel over there, and we call Neelam in India.
Yes, yes, and so here Neelam, when for astrological purposes really,
Yeah.
you are asked to wear a Neelam from
Okay.
time to time,
Yeah.
and people would wear it. But the neelam that is worn in Sri Lanka is more of a pretty dark sapphire,
Okay.
comparatively to what is used as by consumers or loved by consumers, whether it's a lighter shade or a cornflower, they call these cornflower, royal blue, or the different
Okay.
shades of blue. But in
Yeah.
Sri Lanka, it was neelam, which was a darker stone that is asked by astrologists to wear for good luck.
Okay. So here somebody is asking, so if the red sapphire is called ruby, it's not that same as ruby, or is it just confused? They're confused that if the red sapphire is called ruby, or it's not the same, or what is it?
So ruby is a sapphire. So it's quite simple. So it comes from the sapphire family. It's a corundum,
Yes.
and
Yes.
it's just because of its red color and being given, it's more like a brand. So when you
Yeah.
say sometimes Ceylon sapphire, or you go into a store, whether it's New York, Paris, London, and say, "Can I have a pair? I want to make a pair of earrings. Can I have some sapphires?" And your retailer or your local jeweler pull out, even in Mumbai, will pull out two sapphires and say, "Here are two Ceylon sapphires." That's
Yeah.
our old name for Sri Lanka. So they will
Yeah.
first. So the branding would be not Sri Lankan sapphire, but they might say, "Here are two Ceylon sapphires." So the
Yes.
same would go for ruby.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, that Ceylon turned its name to Sri Lanka after the independence in 1948. Is it true, or when
No,
did
no,
the name
long after.
When did the name Sri Lanka come into existence?
If I'm correct, it was late 70s or mid 70s. I can't remember right now, but yeah, it was somewhere around that time. So a lot after our independence, long
Okay.
after.
So,
So
tell me,
Ceylon
how does
tea is
one?
still popular.
Sorry, complete what you were saying.
So, so the Ceylon Sapphire and the Ceylon tea. So both of these are well branded around the world as Ceylon.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the tea is really good. I mean, I can only talk about from my experiences from the Sri Lankan trip. So tell me that sapphires comes in different qualities and colors. You know, there is a good quality, there's a great quality, there's average, and there's just a very bad quality or something. How does one know, like, are there any sort of characteristics where they can differentiate between all of these?
So when you do look for Sapphire from a consumer's point of view, and how can you
Yeah.
buy something that suits you? So one
Yeah.
is kind of set up your budget, then understand what you're looking for, right? And then also see, I mean, okay, what is your need, or what do you like? I mean, if you want something on your finger or as a pendant or pair of earrings, then
Yeah.
you could get something that looks good on you. And
Yeah.
what's really interesting is, in today's world of consumption and consumers, you would want something that would reflect nice, because it's all about playing with light, right? So sometimes a dark blue sapphire may not go well with your skin tone complexion, right?
Yes.
So it might be something different the good thing is you have so many different shades. While
Yeah.
some shades may be more expensive, not necessarily that it might look good on you. So depending what looks good on you, you can go for that, so that you have a choice of buying it at the price or having a budget accordingly.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, Pranay, I think the color, he's saying that the color intensity is important aspect, I think. Do you agree with that, Armal?
Yes, for sure, for sure. So the color aspect, there's different ranges. So we'll say somebody who wants to spend $100 or a few $100 on a stone, to a person who has a very different budget. So it
Yeah.
depends what they want, then what looks good on them. And if it's for astrological purposes, then they may have been told to wear something of a deeper color or a lighter color. So depending on what their belief or what they want, so you
Yeah.
can work around that.
I agree. So, what are the different kinds of, like, we've understood that, but are there any sort of treatments that are done when, the rough of the sapphire comes out, or, how to enhance the colors, or even if there is certain, rough which is not good to make a great quality output out of that? How do you work around that?
So we'll say in if you look at India, they
Yeah,
generally people look out for a 5 to 7 carat sapphire, right? Depending, right? Sometimes 7,
yeah,
sometimes 2 carat. Again, what their requirement or need is, or what they have been asked to wear. Sometimes it is quite possible. So
yeah.
at that point, now we say a 7 carat sapphire, to cut it from a rough stone, you're almost cutting a 20 carat sapphire that's come out of Mother Earth, right?
Yeah,
After it being there for, we'll say, a few 100 million years, right?
yeah,
Of it being there and it's coming out. So to
yeah.
get a 7 carat, you're actually getting a rough stone, which is about 20 carats, and then cutting it down. And it's not something that you get something residue. It's gone. Once you once you cut it and shape it and pre-shape it, the stone is gone. So you only got the finished grade. So at that point, so you figure out how to get the best orientation. So we are lucky in Sri Lanka because we had people with generations of experience and decades of being in the trade to orient the fire rough correctly and get the best yield of the rough stone. Does that
Okay.
answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
And mm,
Moving on, how will one know if a gemstone is heated or treated? I believe Sri Lanka works on they heat the stones, and they don't treat it, unlike other countries. So can you tell me the difference between the heat treatment and what other treatments are applicable for sapphires?
yeah. So in Sri Lanka, we only do the heating. And the reason for that is, so we've got sapphires that come naturally in its color, right? Whether it's blue or yellow. And then the heating process, of course, is decades old in Sri Lanka, where they used to use it for ruby and pink sapphire, right?
Okay.
Mainly, uh, once the heating process, which is actually a low heat, it allows the uniformity of color, right? So which
Arnal,
actually
your
makes the
voice is
stone look,
not, sorry to interrupt, your voice is not clear. So,
yes,
what are the different kinds of treatments applicable to a sapphire, and what is the treatment done in Sri Lanka and other countries in various ways?
Yeah. So we specifically use the heat treatment in Sri Lanka, which is again decades
Okay,
old, right?
okay,
Started with doing it on pink sapphire and ruby for uniformity of color, right? And
okay,
then
yeah,
for the blue sapphire, yellow sapphire, we would use it to enhance the color. So it is on the young sapphire where we would heat it either under a reducing atmosphere or an oxidizing atmosphere. So oxidizing for
okay,
yellow sapphires and a reducing
mm-hmm.
atmosphere for blue sapphires. So we call this
Okay,
material young sapphire, so Gouda, or
okay,
young, it's
okay,
called silky, milky. So different grades of types of Gouda, which is then heated to blue or yellow.
okay. And
Yes.
this is Sri Lanka, but what are the other treatments that are done to sapphires in other countries?
Yes. So in other countries, they also add beryllium, and there is also different types of diffusion. So again, it goes back into the consumer markets and requirements. In some parts of the world, these are accepted because what happens is it's disclosed as
Yeah.
what it is and the different treatments, and that is a basic requirement in our industry, that
Okay.
we must disclose any type of treatment or anything that's done to the material.
Okay. Guys, y'all can all send your questions and we will answer all the questions at the end of the session. Um, Armin, how does one determine the price of a gemstone and what determines the price of it? Are there any tips that you can share on that? Like, for example, someone who is not from the trade, how will they? One is the B2B aspect of it, and one is the consumer aspect. How can they understand the prices of blue sapphires or any other sapphires?
Uh, Obviously, this is a difficult subject to answer in terms of in a broad spectrum. But if you are interested in a specific stone and
Yeah,
you know what you want, what you
yeah,
can do is basically look at a few sources who can supply you, right? And like in any industry, it's about understanding your supply chain, right? So if you are a one-off buyer, it's also like buying a car. You need to know what's under the hood, right? If
yeah.
it's a second-hand car or a used car or a brand new car, and what are the values, what are the benefits. So it's always good to have a trusted source and a
Yeah.
supplier to bring that stone to you.
Okay.
Said that, today you have internet, you want to buy online, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And there are new methods of reviews and so forth. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting marketplace for you to buy, and also gives you comparisons.
Okay. So, will this apply also for consumers? I mean, for trade people, for them, it's far more easier to understand how the pricing works. But how does a layman who does not understand how a gemstone pricing works work around this?
So quite simple. Like if you go out there today, the information is out there. Okay, you Google 2 carat sapphire, you might find something for $20 to $2,000, right, or $5,000. So
Yeah.
then you need to understand the credibility of the supplier, right, on where
Yes.
and how it came. I mean, saying it from an experience perspective, I had a good friend who
Mm.
was involved in the setting up some of the online businesses, e-commerce of gems some years ago.
Okay.
And he was from India, and
Yeah.
he decided to buy a stone for himself online. Now,
Oh.
when he bought the stone, and he asked where the supplier was from, he was from a city in a large city in India, and he asked him, "Okay, my father lives there. Please go and deliver these stones, these 2 stones that I purchased."
Yeah.
Immediately, the supplier said, "I'm sorry, I can't sell this to you. I have played in your father's garden," right? So maybe certain things he didn't disclose at the time, right? So again, that's what happens. So you make sure your supplier is trusted, and so
Yes.
that you make sure, again, in gemstones or anything, there's value for money, right? As well as
Yeah.
what you want to pay for it. So understanding that, you can ask somebody who's in the industry. You might have a friend who knows a little bit. So these are ways to get some support, as well as online today.
Okay.
Hope that
So,
answers.
yes, there are people asking more about this, but we'll take those questions in the end.
Sure.
So, moving forward, uh, I had somebody writing to me, how does someone get into a sapphire trading business if they do not have any jewelry background?
Yes. So one of the exciting things I've been up to in the last, we'll say, 3 years, is setting up a gem art or academy at the source in Sri Lanka, where people can come, because previously education of gems and jewelry was from a consumer's perspective, right? It was from, we'll say, whether it was New York, US, Europe, from different aspects, from a consuming perspective, and it was never really understood the ground situation except for the dealers or the people who actually came down to buy stones, and they went down to the mines and so forth. So today, what I'm excited about is that last 3 years being able to set up and work with some of the large gemological institutions around the world to bring their alumni, their current students and participants to Sri Lanka, show them how it works, and then also explain to them how the trade works. Obviously, it takes many years of experience, and one of my experiences, I think, when I think in my first year into training, I was supposed to buy gemstones, and I bought the wrong stone. I brought it back, and my father looked at it and said, please take it back and sell it, and don't come back until you have sold it. So that took me about 2 weeks, and I had to finally take about a 20% loss. At that time, it was a huge failure, or but that's where, that was a learning. It was a celebration of, okay, so the next time you were super cautious of what you did and how you did it. So I think in the gem industry, to get into the trade, I think you can start small. You can also figure out where, try something where you can maybe afford to lose some money while you can make that money on the round two. So that's a way to, I mean, in any trade you would do that. So that's part and parcel of experience.
Yes, I agree. And someone's writing here, you can learn from failures. Absolutely. I agree with that, and I second that. So tell us a little about the popular laboratories for getting sapphires tested. I mean, are there any particular laboratories that you suggest in Sri Lanka, in India, or internationally, which are the ones known for sapphires?
So, of course, GIA, Goblin, SSFE, GRS. So there's so many different labs, and even in Sri Lanka, you've quite got a handful of labs here, right? And the Sri Lanka Gem and Jewelry Authority has their lab as well. Now, although there's this misconception of the word certificate, it's actually a report, right?
Yes.
So it's almost like getting your blood report done, right? So you go in, give your blood, right, and you get a report. So similarly, the gemstone is all about the science of the mineral, right? So they will tell you, okay, this is a type of stone, this is what it is, it's natural, heated, and so forth. What are the different aspects of characteristics of the stone and what it is. Now, so most of these labs give this report, and today on a high value or a collector level gemstone, it is very important to have these different certification.
Okay. And someone is asking about any labs in India. Would you suggest any of them?
To be honest, I haven't looked at many of the Indian labs, colored
but
stone
I believe
labs.
GI usually is great for gemstone
yeah,
reports.
but GIA doesn't do color stones in India, if I'm right now. So they would, I mean, they might collect. Yeah, there's a window to collect, if I'm correct, and then they would send it to Bangkok or Hong Kong for processing.
There are the sources to process it. Agree. So tell us about some of the most expensive sapphires you've seen in your career.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I'm to be honest, I'm not as lucky as my grandfather and my father, where they have seen some incredibly crazy large stones going through their hands on a regular basis. But I've had my fair share of 100 characters, 50 characters, and been regularly handling them even now. And but it's becoming rare. What's very interesting about some of the important gemstones, it's not come back into the marketplace. It's either traded privately, even if it's or being handed generation to generation, and being kept in a vault. So as much as we would think that, hey, one generation has bought it and another generation has come to maybe liquidate it or want to cash it out, that's happening. I mean, even today with like China being such a Hong Kong and Asia becoming a stronger market for colored stone, we find that it's sometimes what we have sold maybe in a different country or to a different customer so many years ago, we can purchase back or ask them, listen, hey, do you want to make some money and do you want to sell out? The market is this. So that's becoming an interesting trade of a lot of the older stones coming in the market or trading in the market.
I agree. And the stones that used to be there decades ago were, I mean, outstanding.
Correct.
Right, like you said, your father and grandfather have been lucky enough to see it.
Oh, yeah.
So, gemstones are now filled with PB glass. Can you tell us a little more about this?
So that's mainly treated for very low material of a lot with ruby, right?
Okay.
And again, like I was speaking earlier, the different types of treatments is done because of obviously consumer demand for that, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, the disclosure is super important, right? So that the customer and the consumer understands the differences. And if they are looking for something like a daily wear and they want to spend X amount of rupees or dollars, right, then they have something to buy, right? So then the next level. So similarly, that's where the great thing is, because you have the sapphire in so many different price range, so you can afford at different levels.
Okay. And okay. So one second. I think my network is falling. Can, in a layman language, someone figure out if a sapphire is fake or it's real? I mean, I was also seeing that a blue Spinnel and a blue sapphire kind of looks very similar. So how does even one differentiate between that?
Yes, I think it's actually that's where you need guidance and somebody who's your trusted source at that point, because it's incredibly difficult to figure that out. And the closer you come to a mine, the more synthetic sometimes you find. Why? Because it becomes maybe a touristic option, right? It's the same anywhere in the world. It can happen to you. So if you go down to a mine, the chances of buying a piece of glass thinking it's a sapphire or a different colored stone is quite easy, and it will be quick to lose your money.
No, in fact, so when I was mining, one of my experiences, I mean, we did find gemstones, but we also found a piece of glass. And then at that point, we were wondering that they look almost the same, but they're as gemstones, they're altogether different.
Sure. So that's
when the miners over there, they made me understand the difference between the two.
Yes. And that's exactly why you need the person who understands gemology, who can be your trusted, whether it's a retailer, wholesaler, or at a manufacturing. So maybe even 5 tiers of business lines, but that's where your supply chain becomes important,
Yeah.
so that you can give the right product to the all the way right down to the consumer.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think that's one essential aspect for consumers and traders to know. Okay, so why is Sri Lanka known for their blue sapphires, although they are also known for other gemstones?
Uh, I think the blue sapphire is the most famous, similar to like I was saying, the Ceylon tea, right? So Ceylon tea and the Ceylon sapphire kind of have got a huge brand name around the world, and even whichever part of the world you go, even in India, you go and you ask for a nice blue sapphire of good quality, good value,
Yeah,
and obviously
yeah,
you will be presented a Ceylon sapphire. And so blue being the most popular one and the best branded one takes first place. Said
yeah.
that value-wise, a Patparaja or a King Sapphire can be
Ah.
much greater in a per carat value today.
So how would you differentiate that towards a Kashmir sapphire or a Burmese sapphire or any other sapphire?
Well, uh, again, if you look at the gondola continent, if you look at the structure, right? So sometimes the character, right? Sometimes maybe in a place called Elahara, which is in Sri Lanka, right? Which is just south of Sigiriya,
Hmm.
where we find 100-carat large sapphires, beautiful sapphires, and the same character as a Kashmir sapphire. So this brings into question, okay, is it the same value? So at an auction house, should Kashmir or Burmese or Sri Lanka, should it all be the same if the stone looks and feels the same? Or should it
Yeah.
be differentiated because of origin? So it's a very interesting conversation, but a very detailed one.
So, but in that aspect, what characteristics would you determine that which one would have a higher value?
So
Just
it's
a few
about
characters, if you had to say. If you have
it's mainly
all
because,
the
yes.
three which are similar.
So it's because of history, right? So it will go back to auction houses. So when how much did the 50-carat Kashmir last get sold? So some years ago, I was in a transaction for a 50 plus blue sapphire, which was beautiful and which had come out of Madagascar, right? Now, uh, I was acquiring it for a consumer, right, who
Okay.
was wanting to buy up X amount of colored stones on for his portfolio, right? Now, one of the things that I had to convince, a Madagascar stone has never been sold at this price before. One of the
Yeah.
things that I had to explain or present to my customer at that time, because it was a beautiful Madagascar stone that
Yeah.
had never gone at those high prices or those amazing value
Yeah.
from Madagascar at an auction level, because there was no history at that time. So that's where, sometimes it's like purchasing a fine art. If it's a collectible at collectible level, then
Yeah.
you would have to figure out, okay, who's your expert who can guide you. And to be honest, that stone, a few months later, or maybe about 17-18 months later, it doubled and sold at double the price. So
Wow.
that's, yeah, so that's our industry, and that's sapphires.
No, but I think that can be with any gemstone which is of a great quality and color. So
Again,
it's all the
yes,
game of patience.
yeah, I agree. It's about finding the right stone for yourself.
Agree, agree. Okay, so going forward, how do you think is the current situation of the markets with COVID-19, and what do you predict about it for later? Like um, post the COVID also, what do you think? How will the situation be there with the gemstone and the jewelry industry?
So there are couple of things that we would be facing in the next few weeks to months, and that would be understanding the lockdown, what are the consequences to businesses across the uh, globe, because it's not anywhere, it's not one country, it's every one of us, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
so we are going to obviously feel the pinch. We have in the gem and jewelry industry especially, most of us are, we'll say, families that have been in the industry for so many years, or mom and pop
yeah,
shops, retail companies. So
yeah,
you are your village or town or city jeweler, right, or your island
yeah.
jeweler. I have a friend in Tasmania. He calls him the islands jeweler. So
Okay.
right, and everyone would go to him to do their wedding rings, wedding bands, and funnily he charges, because he actually some years ago he was one of the voted or won the designer award for Australia. So he is able to even charge more than the value of the stone for his workmanship and his design, right?
Oh, wow.
uh,
So he's
so
able to command the
yeah,
price.
so command a price. So it's again how we go back into the market. What is the new normal? Are there people who have been like staying indoors for 3 months and saying, hey, I need to spend more money. I need to spend something that's in my account, right? How do we do that, right? So at the same time, there would be another whole range of people who are affected, who were having x amount of sales per month, but that
Yeah,
has dipped by 20% or 50%, or so how do you change it? And
yeah,
my view is, let's not take this as a vacation,
agree.
our current lockdown. Let's think about how can we work, maybe 2 times harder, 5 times harder, to come out of this whole scenario. And when everyone in the world says, okay, this is it, we are done with COVID, you're out, and how do we face it? So if
Yeah,
you look at post World War II, post the Spanish flu, and
yeah,
different situations, and how
yeah.
people moved on. So that's a very
They
interesting
bounced
way to
back.
look at it. Bounce back, yeah.
Yes. So
And
would you give any tips that how should, what are the ways that people can, how they should keep themselves busy right now? Or, for example, what have you been doing to working on yourself since Sri Lanka is also under a lockdown?
yeah, so it's trying to like, because of we when in the gemstone business, the jewelry industry is slightly different, but in the gemstone business, it's all about actual weaving of the stone, for especially at
Yeah,
dealer level, right? And we are so used to that, and it's
yeah,
super hard to move on from that process. But said
yeah,
that, in different parts of the world today, we do use WhatsApp, WeChat, and other channels like Line, and other channels of social media to send and the camera on, I mean, like we are live right now. So the camera
yeah,
on your phone has completely changed how we do things in the world. So we are
I
able
agree.
to, somebody wants to, and the market may be that the person wants to buy that sapphire they've been wanting to buy for 10 years, right? And thinking, oh, I'll buy it next year. So you never
Yeah,
know. And then there might be more engagements, more weddings. So if you look at it from a positive perspective, right,
yeah.
that's all there. So how we as an industry can make it work will be super important, how we come together and make it work for all of us, because
I
it's still a
agree.
beautiful Yeah, it's still a beautiful stone. Like when we spend money on a sapphire, right?
Yeah.
We go home happy, right? Whoever gets it, or even if it's gifted, they're happy with their ring or the pendant. But in the US or some other place where it's super expensive to get dental work done, you pay lots of
Yeah.
hundreds of dollars and you are in a lot of pain, right? So here you have happiness.
I agree. It was an interesting conversation I was having this morning with one of the jewelers, and he was like, because he does one of a kind jewelry, he's like, I'm still doing business. Still have potential clients where we are closing business despite of COVID. And I was like, oh, that's
Yeah,
great. I mean,
yeah.
you're one of the fortunates to say that. So, having
No,
said that, tell
true.
me, what is the situation with the artisanal mining there? Is the artisanal mining affected in any way? And what is the situation with that now?
So because of the lockdown, obviously everything has come to a complete halt here, right? Which is fair enough because it's obviously safety comes first, and how we
Yes,
can beat the virus out of our country and nation, right?
agree.
First call of business, right? Once that is done, we can actually, in terms of colored stones, there has been a shortage, right? Like I mentioned earlier, I'm not seeing what my grandfather and my father and even what I saw X amount of
Yeah,
years ago regularly enough, right? Not weekly, right?
yes,
So the whatever stones, there's a shortage. So although they have stopped mining, right? So
yeah,
because they have stopped mining, obviously there'll be again the shortage will be further when the requirement starts, when things get back to normal. I'm
yes.
like Prina, I was super happy. I got so many messages in the last 1 week from China, from
Hmm.
friends and colleagues and buddies saying, our gym is open. I still haven't gone to the gym, but my gym is open. They sent me a picture in Tianjin of a picture where the roads are absolutely chock-a-blocked. So, I mean, when you would say those days, oh my God, that place is full of traffic, or Bangkok or
Busy and
Beijing, you
buzzing
would say
again.
traffic. Yeah, or
Yeah.
Jakarta. Here, it's like, okay, you are like, okay, I'm glad there's traffic, right? So that's, I mean, it's automatically happening, and I think there's hope uh, beyond what we are going through right now in the lockdown process.
Oh. So, is the government taking any sort of measures to protect and benefit the trade in any way?
Yeah, on that, we have three main associations in Sri Lanka, from the mining district, then from the south, that is Beruala district, and then from Colombo. So
Hmm.
we've obviously been involved in speaking with different people to ensure, anyone who has immediate difficulties and those problems are solved,
Yeah.
right? And obviously, in the weeks to come, stimulus packages will be important.
Okay.
We are an export commodity. We are like
Hmm.
the third largest export of Sri Lanka. So it's an important factor for the country as well. So I'm sure the government will have us on the list to make things. I mean, obviously, we need foreign currency. I don't know about
Yeah.
India, but Asia has been taking a pretty hard beating on their currencies in the last 2 weeks. So, two ways to look at it. Asia becomes more competitive with the depreciation on the positive side. And so, if we can make that work for us, so the governments will bring us some stimulus packages to help, I'm sure.
Okay. Okay. So going forward, tell me, I'm coming back to sapphires now. Tell me, what do
Yes.
sapphires symbolize? I had somebody write to me, and why do some people feel that it is a very strong stone?
Yes. So, uh, this I came across from many years ago, and especially out of India, where people, most people were asked to wear a yellow sapphire, right? And it was very popular, and I would have family friends and other colleagues and other contacts ask me, Amil, you know, can you have, you know, get us this yellow sapphire? I had a very famous cricketer one day call me up from the Indian team at that time and said, I'm so and so, and I'm like, who? And so at that time, I didn't expect that call from him. And if I'm right, he was a vice captain of the Indian team 10 years ago. And so he said, you know, I'm supposed to wear a yellow sapphire. So it's like, so yellow sapphire has been popular. But on the blue sapphire, it's always been like, unless you have been assigned the stone, people were reluctant to wear it.
Agree.
Right? Amitabh Bachchan wears, Mr. Amitabh Bachchan wears 2 blue sapphires, if I'm correct. And so obviously he was going through some difficult times in his life, and he was assigned the 2 stones, or assigned first stone and then another, right? And so people do wear when they are assigned. So a few months ago, I had somebody from New York who's a native Indian. He said, Amil, I want to find again 7 carat. I was talking about this. 7 carat is very popular, assigned for India, right? Actually 6 to 8 carat, right? So I want to find sapphire, and price doesn't matter, but I just want you to source it for me, the right stone, right?
So you're trying to say that the demand has risen from earlier. It's no longer about just the astrological purpose, but people do now also want to wear blue sapphire as a piece of jewelry.
Well, I think most of it is commanded by astrology in India.
Yes, I agree.
Right? Because, but said that there is a complete different generation who don't mind, and then they say, as long as it doesn't touch my skin, I'm not too conscious about how the color works, right? So then, to the extent, like 2 months ago, I had a friend's friend come in, and she had shared me her Instagram, and suddenly I found out she was a celebrity and her movie was just being launched. It just got launched 4 weeks ago, and her co-star has about 40 million Instagrammers on it. And I was like, okay, wow. And I didn't realize that I had a celebrity. I was doing something special. And so again, so you have people of that group now going in for a blue sapphire. Then I've had quite a few calls for very special and expensive stones out of India in the last, we'll say, 1.5 years, and those have been pretty upmarket, high-end collectors level, but for people to wear it.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, and I'm glad India is now moving towards blue sapphire.
No, I mean, we have always been people, like, if we go back into our history, our Maharajas and Maharanis would wear it at that point of time. It's only that there was a period, or there has been a period still, where we do look at it as the astrological purpose. And in fact, in India, people do put their gemstones under the pillow, especially for a blue sapphire. They want to test it, if it works for them or not, because there's a story that blue sapphire can change your fortune from rags to riches or riches to rags. So
right.
we still we still believe in that. But having said that, the Generation Z now does have a different mindset. So they are understanding the beauty and the jewelry aspect of it than just the astrological aspect. So that's a great thing to see the change in the mindset. So
sure.
So, what are the important factors one should keep in mind while purchasing a sapphire?
So it's basically beauty, rarity, and durability, how it's defined a gemstone, right?
Okay.
Then comes next is what you really want, and maybe you have a budget or you don't have a budget,
Right.
right? But still want to get a good deal. Like a recent customer sent me a request and said, Amil, listen, make some money, but make sure you get me a good deal, right? And get me something that's nice and big. So something like this. So it's about, again, goes back because
Yeah.
most of the people who are in this industry is a close-knit community, and
Right.
once you found a trustable source you can work with, right? Whether
Yeah.
it's just to pick up one stone or a source for your store or for your manufacturing, it helps.
Okay. Okay. So now I'm going to move into the questions which have been asked by people in both our videos. So going back where we were talking about red sapphire, they've asked if the red sapphire is called ruby, it's not the same as ruby, or it is. I think we've answered that, so we can
It's the
move
same, yeah.
forward.
It's the same, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Any famous red sapphire mines in Sri Lanka? Which means you're asking for ruby mines, which you mean. I think they're asking.
Yeah, in Sri Lanka, we do not have specific ruby mine. Well, we don't have any mines that are specific to a stone. We
Yeah.
find all kinds of colored stones. We
Everything
have
is
over
available,
60,
yes.
yeah, we have over 60 categories of colored stones. So you might find different types of these stones in any given mine. So there's no separate saying blue sapphire mine, Patparaja mine, or a
Yeah,
ruby mine. But
yeah,
speaking about ruby in itself, we have very intense and beautiful pink, which goes into a deep reddish look, but not a ruby. So Sri Lanka doesn't produce ruby in itself, but we do have star rubies, which is the
yeah.
star sapphire aspect of the sapphire.
That
Yeah.
was going to be my next question. That can you tell us a little more about star sapphires? Like, what are the characteristics to know that if this is a good quality of star sapphire, and what is the phenomena behind that?
So in the star sapphire, it's a corundum, again a sapphire corundum, which has strong silk in the stone, which when you cut it, you can get the 6 rays, and it's called a star sapphire. Now, the more transparent it becomes, the when you cut the stone, or when it's more bluey than more, whereas if you take a gray star sapphire to
Yeah,
a deep blue color star sapphire, the ray will be weaker because the stone becomes transparent. So, but in today's context, we are losing the star sapphires because what happens is, by heating the silk, you can also get a beautiful blue sapphire. So a lot of the material, what we call silky,
yeah,
silky is
yeah.
like it's a trade name again for material that you can heat for getting a fine sapphire. So a lot of the nice star sapphires, which or could have been cut into a nice star sapphire, today may be heated and cut into a sapphire faceted stone because it might fetch a larger price.
Okay, okay. So I think that would answer the question who had asked me about star sapphires. What is the reason that so many Indians like to wear a yellow sapphire?
So it 100% goes down the astrological lane, where they have been asked
They've been
for by
recommended to wear.
recommended to wear that. So on that basis, so I think, I mean, pretty much that's why the popularity of that.
Okay. Um, it is like a yellow sapphire with a darker hue is more expensive than a lighter stone?
Uh, Not a very dark hue, but if the color is nice and
Mm-hmm.
vibrant, that can be expensive than a yellow sapphire, which can be a browny sapphire. So there's
Okay.
a distinct line between a nice yellow
Yeah.
to a light yellow, yes, for sure. Then if it's too deep in yellow or too maybe it has a browny effect, then the value again can go down.
Okay. Having said that, what are the geological settings in sapphires in Sri Lanka?
So we have the Sabaragamuwa district, which is the main mining district. But if you look at the geological setup of Sri Lanka, we
Hmm.
can find gemstones pretty much in any part because most of our mines are secondary mines. In 2012, we were doing a construction right after everything, a lot of construction and development was taking place in an area called Khataragama, which finds tiny stones sometimes. And suddenly, a particular road that was being made to a village was laid with sapphires, large ones for that. And then
Okay.
a lot of people, there was a gem rush, there was a sapphire rush, and then I think lots of people in that village became millionaires overnight. So that was wonderful.
How cool. I wish it happens again.
For sure. And well, Prita, actually, we have reached out to the government because there's so much development taking place in Sri Lanka right now. We've reached out to the
Yeah.
government and said, because there's a lot of bridges, all that happening, we've said,
Yeah.
by any chance, if you hit any kind of gem gravel, please
Hmm.
let us be the first to go in. So at least it
Yeah.
gets extracted and doesn't go under a bridge and lost forever. Because even as a
Agreed.
resource, if we don't use the resource, then it's a gone resource.
Agreed. Agreed on that. Someone is asking, what is the main difference between a red sapphire and a spinel?
Uh, so Spinnel is, I mean,
I'm
Sapphire is
just
from the current. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
no. I am just pulling out a spinel which I got right now when I went to when I went to Burma. So here, this
Nice.
is, if you can see it. I don't think it's very
Yeah.
prominent, but you can actually see the structure, if you can see the formation of over here. Next question. Yes, I was showing the spinel in the meantime to everybody that I got from Burma.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
our question was that how does one differentiate between a red spinel and a red sapphire?
Yeah. Actually, differentiating can be tough unless you know the business, you know the industry, you know how to look at stones. The difference, of course, in terms of what used to be or what a spinel was called many years ago, it fell into what you called a semi-precious category, which no longer
Yes,
is the case.
is the case.
Uh,
Yeah, I agree.
and Spinnel has become a very high value gemstone today. And in terms of just looking at two stones, apple to apple, and saying, hey, this is a Spinnel and this is a ruby, for somebody who doesn't know gemstones and who doesn't know the business is tough. Obviously, if you have studied the gemological aspects, then you might be able to figure out from field clues using a loop, a 10x loop, and finding some of the characteristics in the gemstone. Hey, this is something that is in a sapphire, this may be something. So that kind of clues is the only way you could go about it.
Okay. The next one is, do all heat-treated sapphires obtained from the same locality react in the same way?
From the same locality or different localities?
From the same locality.
No, not necessarily. Every stone differs. So that's an interesting part of the trade, and I think it keeps us engaged, because happens is we look at a gemstone and we want to figure out, okay, is it going to become,
Yeah.
if this is a 20 carat stone, whether we are going to cut it into two stones, is
Yeah.
it going to be cut into one stone? So it's similarly, even in a gouda or what is used for heating, the silky, milky, and this type of material, the young sapphire,
Yeah.
it all can come differently. Obviously, it's years of experience of understanding and looking into the stone and seeing, oh, it has this color, or this, it has a blue patch. We have something called dum, which is smoke. I don't know what
Okay.
is smoke is dum in India also, or
Dua.
smoke, the word, huh?
Dua.
Dua. Yeah, so dum in
Yeah.
Sri Lanka. So there's a type of a material, it's a white sapphire which has what we call dum. It turns out into
Okay.
a beautiful blue color. So
Okay.
unless you know what to look for, you really don't know how it's going to turn out. Uh, in general, you would know from the locality, not only in the locality, but from understanding the different type of material. But yes, if it's from a completely different country, then the results can differ drastically.
Okay. Okay. Can we increase the clarity by treatments?
Yes, you can.
Uh, how about the glass-filled ones?
So the glass filled ones is mainly done to enhance clarity, because most of these stones are really included badly fractured gemstones. So that's why they do that process, so that the look and feel, it's the first look, right? So
Yeah.
finally beauty turns out to first look, right? So it's a first look, so that's why they go through this process, because when you look at the first look, it looks nice.
Yeah.
So that's why this process is really brought on.
Okay. How different is cutting process for a sapphire from a diamond? Is it planned in a serene-like software or is it a laser cut?
So um, let's, I mean, not being competitive against the diamond, but okay, diamonds, while being the girl's best friend, are in plenty, right? Comparatively to sapphire, right, and certain colored stones. So
Yeah.
the amount of gemstones that do come out is different.
Hmm.
And then a diamond, you're just cutting it for white, right? A sapphire, whether it is a patparaja, which is a orangey pink or pinky orange, whichever way you look at it, and then the blue, how you want because there's a green aspect to the sapphire, the corundum, on the c-axis and other things, right? So
Okay.
how do you cut it? So that's one of the things I was saying is, in Sri Lanka, we are very lucky. We have some of the most experienced cutters, where when a rough stone is found, depending on how it can be best to get the best yield and the orientation of color. So in diamond, you could cut it in pretty much in different directions and you can get the same result. But in a
Yeah.
sapphire, we'll say the saturation of color is in a corner, right? If we take that out, maybe the gemstone might become 2 shades lighter, then the value also will change, right? Not because of it's a lighter color in itself, but how you have placed the color to get the best result. So that way, because of the decades of experience out of Sri Lanka, we are lucky to have some super experienced people to do that orientation.
Okay. Continuing from that, in an orange sapphire, what is the consistency of a beryllium treatment, or is it used for other sapphires also?
Yeah, so beryllium treatment and similar treatments are to give uniformity of color, right? So on the uniformity of color, yes, it will give uniformity of color. So that's why disclosure is very important,
Okay.
because the differentiation of that can and must be done by the person selling it, the dealer, the retailer, the manufacturer. It's super important that this disclosure is done so people know what they are buying, because obviously the value propositions can be very different.
Okay. The next one, how do you see the future of sapphires? Which color do you think will be good in terms of prices?
Interestingly, the consumers today are fashion conscious at the same time, right? So while there are those traditional colors of blue, pink, yellow, right? People are going now for a teal color, which is a mix between green and a blue, which normally some years ago I would have thrown it back into the hole in the mine, right?
Yeah.
And I wish like, oh, shoot, why did I keep this, right?
Yeah,
My
yeah,
father always told me, always keep what you have, because the gemstones you don't have to feed, you don't have to shelter.
yeah.
It just goes into your vault. So, so don't throw it back, because you never know.
So that's another lesson learned, Armin.
Yes, yes, yes. So it's very interesting, the different colors that people enjoy today is sometimes not the traditional colors that was perceived even just a few years ago.
Okay. So we are just going to take the last couple of questions now. For blue sapphires, which is the best market for this?
Uh, Again, it has become almost a numbers game, where China has woken up. It was a sleeping giant for colored stones. So that if, and like I said, if India wakes up, my God, right? That would be another opportunity, right? It's a the opportunity is great because you have a range of prices, range of colors, range of sizes. So
Yeah.
affordability is possible at different levels of what you need.
Okay. Okay. Someone is asking, what is the difference? Samarjit is asking, difference between fire opal and white opal.
Uh, well, the on the opals you have the different grades, right? You had the white, you had the fire opal, then you again origin also Australia, now you have Ethiopian opal.
Yeah.
So you have so many different types. Then of course you have the black opal, which is of high value, and then again special pieces. So it depends on what you're looking for, and the type of material, because again opal comes in a varied range of different types.
Someone has been sending me this question repeatedly. What is the name of the jeweler friend you had mentioned in Tasmania?
Oh, his name is Chris Hood.
Okay, I know Chris. I don't know
Yeah,
if they would know them, but yes,
yeah, yeah,
I've
yeah.
met Chris earlier. They're asking, what is the price range you think one should buy a sapphire for a pendant? I think that would be a very personal choice and one's
Personal
budget,
choice. Yeah, yeah,
and
correct. A few
how
hundred
pocket
to
friendly it is for
yeah,
them. Yeah.
yeah, depending how much you want to spend.
Okay. Then just is there a possibility of sourcing a Kashmir sapphire and as it's rare to find? Okay, so for those kind of questions, you will have to direct message me or Armil, and then if we will be able to help you post the lockdown, or maybe
Sure.
if there's any way we can help you with that. Do
Of
you
course.
believe in the astrological factor in blue sapphire?
Yeah, it's very interesting because I came across a person recently, and I mean, we've been around minerals
Yeah,
pretty much all our lives, I can say, right? Even from being a
yeah,
child, going into your dad's office room and messing around with gemstones on the table, right? To today.
yeah.
Uh, so I've looked at it from a different perspective recently, because somebody said, hey, you touch minerals every day and you're so lucky. I was like, okay. And I've come across a few people recently, like when we are going through sitting and looking at gemstones together, and they're like so excited. And some people who live life in a different frame as well. So I think it's great. I mean, we sometimes take it for granted. So there are things in life sometimes come to us, we don't see the value too much. It's like, when you have the beach across the road or the ocean across the street, you don't value it, right? But then you go to a country where you have to drive five hours to get to the beach on a long weekend, and with 6 hours of traffic, then you start valuing it. So it's like that. I think minerals are like amazing, and it keeps, I think there's something special, and energy that comes from these stones are, I think, really great.
Okay. So, Armil, the last two questions. Future of Tanzanite in comparison to blue sapphire?
It's an interesting question, good one. I think Tanzanite is something very nice and beautiful. And of course, it's two different types of gemstones. So again, it's what your requirement is, and and anyway, you don't, if you need Tanzanite of a certain size and quantity, it's available, right? Sapphire, it's not so, and then the value propositions are very different. So it's very hard to really compare it, and I think both have a market, because both are beautiful. They're, I mean, nice, and there is a demand for both. Both are well branded in the world, so I think there is a demand for both.
Okay. Now, this is our last question for today, because I don't want to hold you any longer. It's an hour and a half.
Nice.
Please tell us about the different types of treatments in sapphires, and how is Sri Lankan treatment different from the treatment in Thailand?
So just to go back, Sri Lanka, we are allowed, and we only do the heating process, right? So so because of that, that's all we do, and that's all we can do, and we are happy by doing that. In a country like Thailand, it's a mass production or mass producer of different materials for many years, which come from around the world. I was in a place which I don't think most people know. It's a place called Chandler in China, where they have sapphire mines in China. And these are really dark, not pretty at all, these sapphires, right? And I even found that the biggest buyer of this type of stones is Thailand. And then Australian sapphires also, before the teal color became interesting to anyone, nobody would, I mean, it was traded in large quantities, or mined also in a large process. So what would happen is they would do the processing in a country like Thailand, and Thailand managed, so then it also became a marketplace and a platform where people could come and buy gemstones at different prices, and they were all available at, we'll say, different ranges of prices and as products. So that's the difference with what you will find in Thailand.
Oh, I think we've hope that answers your question, and we've pretty much answered everybody. So, Armal, I would like to thank you a lot. I would really like to thank you for giving all this time. And it's been an hour and a half, and you've been very patient with answering all our questions. Hope this session has helped everyone. And I will, in fact, also share with them the other video which we had made on blue sapphires while I was in Sri Lanka. So that would also answer a lot of their questions. Thank you for signing in. Armal, thanks a lot for all your time once again. And stay safe and stay at home. All my positive vibes to everybody there and your family.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.